So the Iran-Israeli conflict heated up with the United States stepping in, dropping bombs on 3 different targets. Now we have a call from Israel wanting to end the war, and I believe Iran has countered back saying it's not time for the war to be over yet. I was also struck by the failure of the Iron Dome within Israel in the use of modern warfare with hypersonic missiles. And this is actually one of the graphics I think we're looking at here that I found is in an image of what this actually looks like in modern warfare. And this is heavy use of drones, heavy use of hypersonic missiles. And as I've had a chance to catch up on some of what's happening here, really starting to think about what modern warfare looks like and how outdated some of our thinking is and what military conflict looks like. Lucas, I know that this is something that you've brought up routinely as the hypersonic missiles in the use of modern warfare. I'm curious about your thoughts on what's happening with the war and the calls for this to end quickly. Do you think it's going to end quickly? And what are your thoughts on the matter?
I do not think that it's going to end quickly at all. But I do think that the hypersonic missiles are an absolute advance in warfare that gets us away from the mutually assured destruction of the 1950s era nuclear bombs. It truly is an innovation that kind of sets that threat aside and opens up the door for much more targeted and precise military campaigns. And if you think about
Precision was the word that really struck in my mind as far as like what the use of hypersonic missiles and drones allows to happen is targeting exactly what you want in these conflicts. And it sure seems like this is where the technology has developed too.
Yeah, and if you think about the difference in styles of tactics with regards to the use of the hypersonic missiles versus nuclear strikes or more conventional strikes, look at the difference between Israel sort of bombing, and let's say Israel and Ukraine and the United States. The United States bombing apartment complexes in Yemen, Israel bombing, targeting Hamas or people that they assume or think that are associated with Hamas terrorism, targeting them in their homes and trying to wreak as much civilian destruction as possible. And but those countries that have hypersonic missiles that are able to strike with almost impunity, seek a very different method of inflicting those strikes. So pay attention to the notice that they give. And the United States does this in some instances. You mentioned the 3 nuclear sites that the United States bombed over the weekend. By the United States, by reports from the United States and Iran, confirmed by Iran, the United States alerted them that they were going to bomb those targets. And so we can hope on one hand that we will see military action in the future that targets military infrastructure and electrical grids and power infrastructure, and does not target civilians. But for those who do not have that capability, the weaker hands, they have engaged in the terrorism of killing as many civilians as possible. So you also mentioned the Iron Dome. We've always known that. I mean, there was a reason that the United States did not build the Star Wars program after Reagan floated that idea back in the 80s. And the reason had to do with the limitations of the possibilities for what that, how effective that could be. Israel thought that they could make it effective because they have such a smaller area and to protect, and they also had they had more disparate groups with smaller smaller ordnance, smaller missiles that they were able to deflect or to take out of the sky with their bullet on bullet sort of notion of air defense. But the ability of large nation states to defeat that is there are many ways to defeat that, by exhaustion of those air defense missiles because of the number of missiles that you have to fire to take out one that's coming in. I think it's somewhere close to 10 to 1. And there are also different, they made them faster too. This is part of the reason that that Russia, Iran, India, various countries around the world, China, have built these hypersonic missiles so that they could strike with impunity. So,
So instead of laying waste with indiscriminately to some huge area, now with the hypersonic missiles, you can just you can hit the target that you want, and these are really hard to defend against. So this is what we're seeing as modern warfare. It's precision strikes with super fast missiles and then drones. Like, this is where we're at in modern warfare, and Iran seems to definitely have mastered these technologies and is demonstrating this against Israel.
Yeah, they're bringing up. I think drones might be of an even more modern development. These hypersonic missiles are developed in the wake of the nuclear detente that existed through the world. Countries like Russia seeking options that did not rely on their nuclear arsenals or backing down, and the tricks of diplomacy. But drones are an even newer a newer invention and introduction into modern warfare. And we have this word terrorism that when I was a child was something that was barely spoken. It usually had to do with Islamic extremism from Western Asia, and then after the Oklahoma City bombing, we begin to introduce that concept as a possibility from within American borders, and I think that that was a phenomenon that occurred throughout the world. Now we use terrorism without even thinking about it. But if we get back to what the roots of that differentiation between terrorism and a civilian was and is, it means that the state has a different level of expectation of how they're going to use force against someone. Terrorism used to mean they're being protected by the state. We're going to reach past the state and try to strike someone within the state. Now we also we've bent our understanding of the protections of law for people inside our countries too. So and I think as I think about the drone capabilities and our concerns about surveillance and the Patriot Act, I'll throw the word Palantir into that mix. What are our expectations of privacy going to be in the future? Because countries are going to be responding to the state terrorism that has been used against Iran, against Russia, to legitimize a lot more caution in their countries. And so we're probably going to see that in the United States very quickly.
So we saw developments from Palantir over the weekend. There was statements from a couple of the co-founders talking about the current situation and the war between Iran and Israel. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about Palantir? I could try to pull up some of those articles, or one or two, and throw it on the screen quick.
Well, the statements from Palantir and Donald Trump, the president of the United States, and many others have moved from the concern about nuclear technology in Iran to the regime change, as if we've learned absolutely nothing in the past. I say as if we've learned absolutely nothing. I think this is where we begin to see a difference between the desire of populations within states and the desires of the of I'll use Dwight Eisenhower's phrase, the military and industrial complex. But I think in large part that is also a global corporate interest in these words like regime change. Because if we look at our history of regime change, we do not get stability in the wake of that regime change, and the legitimization that's trotted out to American people and Western Europeans is that we're doing this for democracy and we're doing this for humanitarian reasons. But what we see in the wake of that is absolute chaos. And in the wake of that chaos, corporations, energy corporations, and military corporations stand to benefit to a very large degree. And now, on top of that, we have the interests of the likes of Palantir. And Palantir providing the the parsing of data capabilities to the Israeli government in the targeting of Palestinians in Gaza. But Palantir, who's recently been given over the keys to the information that's been compiled on United States citizens that was previously kept compartmentalized because of these concerns about privacy. Well, we're wiping that all away. And despite the complaints of Americans, we're not a democracy. We're a republic, and our representatives nod to the cries of the American people, but they're going to turn and they're not going to bite the hand that holds the cash that feeds them. So I'm afraid that we're going to see the pendulum continue to swing towards the interests of the likes of Palantir.
Well, I think with some of the shift in what's happening here with the U.S. getting involved in the war and then turning towards Palantir, I think you're starting to see a lot of the support that Donald Trump had is turning. I felt the sentiment turning pretty strongly this weekend, where there are a lot of people who feel very betrayed by some of the moves that have come out of the White House, especially, this move towards regime change. Like, that was kind of a word that everybody wanted to shy away from. That if you mentioned regime change, that meant we were getting involved in another ground offensive within the Middle East, and that is explicitly was said was foolish moves that never should have been done. And it sure seems like some of the words that are coming out of the White House, when you think about regime change, you can't do that with a couple of bombs dropped from B-2 bombers. Like, that requires to actually move military in and start doing real, ground game stuff. This requires a lot of boots on the ground, and Iran is a much different country than Iraq, and this is not 20 years ago. So, if we start talking about regime change and we're serious about it, this is not what I think a lot of the people who said "Make America Great" wanted when they voted for Donald Trump, and they definitely did not vote for "Make Israel Great." I'm not sure, or Iran great. I'm not sure what the I is supposed to mean. Many people are kind of jokingly say that, the I in MAGA is Israel, but he said "Make Iran Great Again." But I don't think any of the MAGA crowd really expected that this was what was going to happen, within the first part of the Trump presidency.
Now, you mentioned boots on the ground. I don't think that we're going to see boots on the ground
The only reason I'm saying boots on the ground is I don't know how you effectuate a regime change without doing something like that. I mean, if they were serious about regime change, can we do that just dropping bombs?
Well, the boots on the ground was the blue collar, hardworking moral approach to regime change that assumed some sort of support from large numbers of people within.
Oh, so this is regime change through something like Palantir, or is like that?
This is regime change through assassination, is what I'm afraid we're going to see.
Gotcha. So they're just going to try and like take the head off the snake with the data from Palantir and some form of targeted kill the entire administration or something like that.
Yes, and it's not going to work. So it's I should say there will not be stability in the wake of that. I think there will be even a longer period of chaos. But again, this is in the United States' longstanding interest of chaos in Western Asia is good for the United States because it foils the interests of Russia and China. So, and I think this is where it's going to get very interesting to see how Russia and China converge to support Iran. If we've talked about the Belt and Road Initiative of China and sort of their alternative path. They understand the tactics of the United States coming out of World War II and how the implicit threat that was not realized in the previous decades that we've had because American power was so asymmetrical and so powerful, but the threat still existed, and China understood that as the power balance between some of the leading regional powers of the world, Russia and China, became more equalized, that threat was going to be realized because America would be desperate to maintain the previous control that it had on many areas in the world. So Iran is very important for China. We talked in the past about China's support for Pakistan. Well, Pakistan is west of China, and directly west of Pakistan is Iran, and west of Iran are waterways to Europe and down to Africa. So if China is interested in having securing their trade routes, important trade routes, as well as populations, Iran is very important. Russia likewise is thinking in the same manner. And for
well, thinking about those trade routes, so we've heard talk that Iran's parliament voted to close the Strait of Hormuz. This is a big corridor for Europe to get oil. I think China also gets a lot of the oil coming out of this, but they have another path. I believe they've got that railroad that can get oil straight to China. So, how important is the Strait of Hormuz and what's happening here?
I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is very important to the United States, but I
heard it was less important for the United States. That a lot of this oil goes to China and to Europe.
The assumption that's being made there is Iran is going to is only going to stop traffic of all the tankers. For those tankers who are delivering oil to China or to other countries who they consider neutral or aligned with their interests, they're not going to stop that traffic. So all of this, all of these people are saying, well, Iran's not going to close off traffic through the Persian Gulf because they can't stop selling their oil to China. That's really easy. You let those ships through and you stop everyone else, because even if it's 10% of the energy use of Europe and the United States, that who are the American empire allies in Western Europe? It is the Gulf states. So that is going to dramatically that's going to have the greatest effect on them and second-tier effects on Europe and the United States. The United States has alternatives. We have the Permian oil fields. We have possibly we can make up with Canada and get some of that oil from the northern slope, put in a pipeline and headed back our way. What's Europe going to do? Europe's going to be driven to turn towards Russia or to the United States.
Or to the United States.
petroleum.
Yeah, exactly. So this is not a problem for today necessarily, but like as we move into the colder months, if this drags on, and it sounds like Iran doesn't have much impetus at this point or much appetite to ending this war.
No, not at all. Because you mentioned earlier Trump's base being disappointed. I count myself disappointed too. Some people are angry. Some people have decried Trump as being stupid. I don't think he's stupid. I think that there is a very difficult and complex phalanx of interest that he is having to fight, and those deal with this military industrial complex. It may be headquartered in the Pentagon, but it is very hard to pin down. It's even a way of thinking that some people call Cold War thinking. I would say is a zero-sum coercive based understanding of the world that is incredibly hard to defeat. Russia understands this. China understands this. China has been fighting it by trying to create an alternative trading system than that of these global corporations that are based out of Europe and the United States in the West. Russia also has been thinking about the long game with regards to that, and their response, I think, was very intentional in Ukraine. There are many who said, "Oh, they expected immediate regime change or immediate effects of their special military action in Ukraine." I say no. They knew that it would be business as usual if that happened, and so they have been well suited by a long running a long running conflict that has ratcheted up the conflict in between the countries, the people, the supposedly democratic people in the various countries that support these global machines. And Iran is going to, I think, take the same tactic in Israel. So when Israel reaches out and says, "We want we didn't realize you had so many missiles. We want to talk." Why would Iran talk to them after they coordinated with the United States to draw in with credulity into these discussions about the nuclear program, and meanwhile to be setting them up for assassinations and for a Pearl Harbor attack?
Do you think that Iran was hoping to bait the United States into some sort of a bigger role in this, that Iran would have responded, hit some U.S. military bases, and then that would have ratcheted up the conflict? I heard that this may have been one of the desires that Israel had to try to accomplish with the strikes that they got from the United States, and that Iran didn't respond the way that they had hoped.
So I think Iran is most concerned about Israel's nuclear capability, and that I think is the real reason that they engage in that nuclear program and have been, poking the bear or poking the snake with a stick.
So look at how effective the hypersonic missiles are. I mean, like, if you use a nuclear bomb, I mean, that is international condemnation. I don't think that would go over well in the international community in any way, but with the hypersonic missiles, you skirt that issue. So is it even still that big of an issue? I mean, it would definitely put Iran into the class of, at the superpowers of the world. But, when we're talking about military effectiveness, I mean, we haven't really seen nuclear weapons used except as a deterrent to fighting.
Well, I mean, think of how the international conversation has shifted since there was a focus of attention on Iran's nuclear program. Nobody spoke about
Well,
it.
but we've been talking about Iran's nuclear program for 20, 30, 40 years. Like I've seen clips where you see Netanyahu talking about how close Iran is to a nuclear bomb, and it's like every couple years it's the same message. They're on the cusp and it's almost about to happen, and here it is. Like it's kind of shocking when you see some of these clips put next to each other and you see the years on it. It's the kind of thing that now we live in this digital age where we can resurrect these clips, we can resurrect these things so easily. That was a lot harder to do back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. I mean, how could you possibly have the ability to just string those together? But now that we have access to the digital archives of everything that's ever been said from anybody, and it's all searchable and you can easily mash it up together, you can see that the same message has been trotted out, has been repeated, has been said over and over and over again. It just doesn't seem genuine, and it's hard to get people to swallow that now.
Every time I hear Netanyahu or any uh, political leader from Israel or anyone from Israel talking about their concern for Iran's nuclear program, the word that comes up to my mind is projection. And they may have been talking about it for a very long time, but the rest of the world was not talking about Israel's nuclear program. We still do not have members of our government, with the exception of maybe Thomas Massey, not members of our State Department. Has Marco Rubio talked about nuclears or Israel's nuclear weapons? No. And so to me, this is where Iran and other countries in the world thought if we're going to have non-nuclear proliferation, if we're going to have international law regarding nuclear weapons, then we've got to have everybody be honest and put their guns on the table. And Israel still has yet to do so. So until they do so, I don't think Iran is going to stop their bombardment. They have the upper hand with regards to their hypersonic missiles. They have upper hand with regards to their production capabilities. They have a much larger population. They have a lot more land. They have relationships with other countries like China, like Pakistan, like Russia. They are. Why would they stop? I mean, again, there was the dishonesty with the intent and with the negotiations with Israel leading into this conflict. There was the attack, the terroristic assassinations, and targeted in civilian areas by Israel leading into this. They're not gonna pull back. And in fact, I would say that again, I go back to, I said I was disappointed with Donald Trump in with the political theater of the bombing campaign. Sure, that's maybe his calculation was, I can't fight this political or this global military industrial complex. I have to give them something. I have to get Israel off my back. I'm going to call Iran and tell them that I'm going to take this excuse or concern of their nuclear capabilities off the table with this theater. But what I had wished that Donald Trump would do uh, prior prior to that, or the alternative path that I saw, was to say, Israel, your concerns about Iran's nuclear capabilities are valid, but Iran's concerns about your nuclear capabilities are valid. And so we need to have a come to Jesus, a come to Jesus about all of the nuclear capabilities of all countries, and we need to reinforce this organization, depoliticize it, maybe set up some barriers for their sharing of information or compartmentalize that, so that is not used against countries like Iran going forward. But he didn't do that, and has made no such moves in that direction. So that's where I was most disappointed. He had a golden opportunity there to put that on the table.
Yeah, so speaking of the nuclear programs, I saw that this was kind of breaking news, and I thought maybe what we should do is take a few minutes to talk about how to stay connected to some of these things. Listening to the U.S. standard media, I get zero value out of that. I can't watch Fox News or CNN or any of that kind of stuff. I feel like before, in a lot of the stuff that happened in 2023 and 2024, I turned to X. I found that with what was happening, with the escalation of tensions between Iran and Israel, that X again provided a very solid path towards keeping abreast of what was going on, with a solid flow through Spaces and other types of alternative media. This account, I thought, did a fantastic job of covering this. They had 24/7 coverage of what was going on, with a variety of speakers coming through that were extremely knowledgeable, varied viewpoints, bringing up a lot of different things that were happening. This is very breaking news that they're suspending cooperation with the IAEA. If you want to stay abreast of things, I know that you have a few accounts that you like very much. I think Ray McGovern is one of them.
So Ray McGovern, I love Ray McGovern. He is a former CIA analyst. Judge Napolitano, who I never caught. I guess he's a former Fox pundit. But he has a show on YouTube that has the likes of Ray McGovern, that has the likes of John Helmer, whose X handle is bears_with, or dances with bears. Helmer is a diplomat who is an expert on Russia/Western relations. I believe he's Australian. So I also like to listen to what leaders or mouthpieces of some of these interested powers are. Russia and Iran, top of the list. And China with Russia.
So Judge Napolitano was Fox News, and I think we've seen some breakaway from Fox. Tucker Carlson started to say that Fox News was brainwashing people, was co-opted. That this is a turn from this media source from many. So did Judge Napolitano sort of break away in a similar fashion to what Tucker Carlson has done? Is this what we're seeing, where the MAGA Republicans are now turning on this former very popular news source?
I don't know of Napolitano's history with Fox. I should caveat any discussion about Fox with, I've never watched them. I've never watched CNN. Since the advent of the internet, I used to keep all the nation's papers of record with Google Translate, and I would follow newspapers around the world for my news. I'm even wary of newspapers anymore. I used to think that TV was a bunch of was a soap opera that was that had emotional takes, and that was ratcheting everything up and discredited more thoughtful and maybe less salacious takes. But I'm more so wary now. We have phrases like I don't even remember the mainstream media. I think when people were coming up and tossing that around with their head, what they were really getting to was corporate media, and the insidious effect that the who's paying for media and whose ideas and takes on the world are being laid out as the cold hard truth. So I'm very wary of corporate media. It's one reason that I love X. I like YouTube, and the creator aspect of it. So I enjoy Judge Napolitano's guests. I found him through some of his guests that I follow. Ray McGovern being one of them. John Helmer, another. There's also Larry Johnson, who has another show on YouTube called Countercurrents. Larry Johnson is another former CIA analyst. I believe he was a senior aide to Colin Powell. And so I enjoy getting the takes from former members of government, who have a long background with the relations between various nations. And again, as well as like listen to it's nice to color, to get the color of their commentation with regards to what's happening. If you want some breaking news, or if you want to have a couple of anchors in reality, also turning to the mouthpieces of various countries is very important. And for Iran, that would be Professor Morandi, who speaks in who I mean, I heard him on Suleiman's space the night of the United States bombing campaign, and he talked openly of it. So he was very aware, as I'm sure many in Iran was aware, that the United States had alerted them that they were going to be targeting those nuclear sites. So Morandi is wonderful. When it comes to Russia, I like Medvedev, and he is a much more nationalist voice for Russia. People talk a lot about Putin, but Medvedev will give you an idea of what the hardliner nationalists are saying in Russia, and what sort of the alternative to what Vladimir Putin is saying is being tossed around in the political rhetoric inside that country.
Well, I think we're almost at time here. I think one, and all these we'll throw into the show notes. So if you're trying to keep up with what's going on, definitely a few YouTube accounts, a few X accounts to take a look at. I still think Spaces is one of the premier places to be able to catch breaking news, to be able to get unfiltered things that are happening. It feels to me like what cable news 24/7 coverage always said that they had wanted to do, but I think that in X and Spaces it comes off in a much different way. And then with YouTube Live, it's another kind of similar type of experience where people can just be talking about something that's happening, news breaks, and then they just start talking about it in real time. And many of the people that cover these things in real time will immediately have a perspective because they live in the country, they've had experience with things that are going on, and there's an ability to get access to information right now that is much more unfiltered and in a different way. And that's why in some ways I think this is going to play out much differently than what happened with the Iraq war, back in the 2000s, because there's just not the ability to trot things in front of the US populace in a way that it's hard to break through it. You can easily get to the other side of the argument. You can hear from people that are on the other side of that conflict, and you can hear people from within it, and you can hear it in their own words. It's not filtered through American media or corporate media or mainstream media, whatever you want to call it. You can hear it right from the words of those actual people. And if that narrative is counter to what the US is putting out or what the corporate media is putting out, then now you're left to decide which is really telling the truth and what's right. And that to me feels like a different world, and that makes information and the flow of information such a critical component of how these conflicts are going to end up playing out.
I really like Spaces for how quickly information can be conveyed through them, but I do think that the quality of the information in Spaces is dubious. So when you're in Spaces, be very wary as to which spaces you're trotting into, because many of the spaces that are thrown up are they're worse than Fox News or CNN. And
You're not wrong about that. You got to pick the right spaces. That's one of the reasons why I thought it would be a good thing for us to run down a few accounts to look at, some to follow, places to go for information. Because if you just go into spaces and pick the top one, man, there were some that I, cycled through and really felt like they were not providing good information, and having that sense of where to look, who to go to, what are the right ones. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And so, even when some of this stuff was breaking, I said, hey Lucas, what are you listening to right now? Because I feel like these two that are covering it are doing a poor job of it, and I don't feel like the information I'm getting is any good. So knowing some of the right accounts to look at, knowing where to go for information, the fact that they exist was one of the things I was highlighting. But you're definitely bringing up a good point, that just because you're getting this unfiltered conversation, it doesn't mean that that flow of information is high quality, or even that you're getting the right message. It just is a different channel of where that corporate media or that corporate speak might be coming from.
well, if anyone wants hot takes from me about some of Space's hosts, you can always DM me, and I'm likely to tell you exactly what I think. There are a couple of really good ones out there, but yeah, be wary. Again, Judge Napolitano, and some of the other reasons that I turn more so to YouTube channels for information also is they do put their shows up live, but they're also condensed. And another issue with spaces is the dilution, as people hold a space for hours and hours and hours. Maybe that's a great thing whenever events are actually happening, but you're also not sure of the veracity of the reports that are being presented. So take a mixture of it. It's just like trading. You don't want all of your eggs in one basket. So a lot happening in the world today. So we'll keep an eye on it and hope for the best. That's all I got.
All right, we'll see you next time on FOMO.